Welcome to Paws for Thought. This week we'll speak to world-renowned author of animal books, Jeffrey Masson. He'll tell us about his latest book, Beasts, What Animals Can Teach Us About the Origins of Good and Evil. We'll also talk about rodeos. How common are they in New Zealand and what is their impact on animals? Rodeos are presented to the public as a fun day out for families, but the suffering of the animals is not talked about. But first, American Jeffrey Masson is a long-term New Zealand resident. He's the best-selling author of 9 books about the emotional lives of animals. Jeffrey's book, Dogs Never Lie About Love, has sold more than 1 million copies. And his book, The Face on Your Plate, explains that the meat and animal products we eat come from living beings who suffer and die to produce this food. Jeffrey is a vegan. He stopped eating dairy products and eggs after visiting dairy and hen-laying facilities and seeing the misery and suffering endured by animals so humans can have eggs and milk. Jeffrey will tell us about why caging pigs and hens is so cruel, and we'll also ask him about his new book, Beasts. In it he says there are 2 supreme predators on the planet with the most complex brains in nature, humans and orcas. In the 20th century alone, humans killed 200 million other humans, i.e. members of our own species, while orcas killed no other orcas. Let's talk to Jeffrey. Kia ora, Jeffrey. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Catriona. Nice to be back.
Good to have you back again, and Benji as well. Welcome to Benji.
Thank you.
Why did you write The Face on Your Plate?
Well, I wrote that book because until then, the first book I did about animals was called When Elephants Weep, and writing that turned me into a vegetarian. Then I did a book when I was here in New Zealand called The Pig Who Sang to the Moon, and that was about the emotional lives of farm animals. And that turned me vegan because I realized how much suffering went on in the lives of animals on a farm. And then I thought I should be more explicit about that and just flat out say, I'm a vegan and here's why. So I wrote a book called The Face on Your Plate, which is about becoming a vegan, what's involved, what that means, and why I did it. And basically the title kind of says it. It's because when you eat these animals, there is somebody there, not a thing, but a personality, a face on your plate. And I didn't want to be complicit in that kind of suffering.
And what can you tell us about the suffering of hens in battery cages and pigs in sow stalls and farrow and crepes?
Well, it's intense. I mean, the amount of suffering that they go through is, from our point of view, almost unimaginable. We cannot put ourselves, and it would require a great deal of imagination and empathy to say, oh, I see what they're going through. And of course, people don't want to do that, and that's why they keep it hidden. Here in New Zealand, I wanted permission to go and see chickens on an egg-laying farm. And it was very hard to get that. I finally did. I wasn't dishonest, but I didn't say I'm going to write about how they suffer. And they sent 2 scientists with me, and I think it was in Pukekohe, yeah. It was a giant shed. And when I walked in, I mean, the scientists could see my face. It was just horrendous. You had 30,000 hens in there. And the odor and the ammonia and the space they had, it was just horrendous. And I couldn't believe that. I said, these hens are suffering. They looked at me like, what are you talking about? I said, well, anyone can see that. This is not the life that they were meant to live. And they said to me, what do you mean by meant? I said, by nature. Nature makes a chicken, and the chicken does certain kinds of things. They scratch in the dust, they lie in the sun, they stretch their wings out, they lay eggs, and chicks are born from those eggs, and they teach them what to eat. I mean, they have a life, they have friends, they have family, and they can't do any of that in here. That's what I call suffering.
And it's physical suffering and psychological suffering as well.
Well, of course, psychological suffering every instant. To the extent that they only live a limited number of weeks, that's physical suffering. They're going to be killed long before their lifespan is over. You have to remember that a chicken is a bird, and they evolved to live a long time. So wild chickens, for example, live up to 20 years. That's how long they can live in the wild, and no chicken lives beyond a year. So they're not, I mean, they're just babies when they're slaughtered. So it's horrendous. And of course, when you look at the ones who are laying eggs, actually what I was talking about is so-called fryers, chickens who are going to be fried. Horrible word when you think about it, to call an animal a fryer. But the hens who lay eggs, they're kept in these tiny little cages, often 6 to a cage, but the size of, a couple of these pages. So there's no way that they can behave like hens. And they eventually, of course, turn to a kind of cannibalism. They peck each other, which is why they clip their beaks. I mean, they're basically going psychotic, just as we would if we were kept in tiny little cages for our whole life.
I know, I sort of think the worst punishment that we give to the people, the humans who commit the most horrendous crimes, is we put them in jail, and that's what these animals have for their whole lives, and they haven't actually done anything wrong.
What a great point, Catriona. I hadn't even thought of that. You're absolutely correct. That's what it is. They're being sentenced to life in prison. Good, and that's good. I like that. I'll use that in my next book.
Well, I mean, we don't have actual life imprisonment for anyone in New Zealand, do we? Even if it's the worst crime. So, okay, and it's also the intensity, isn't it? Because, as you say, birds and pigs are not meant to be kept in such huge flocks. So there's problems even with free-range.
Oh yes, I mean I meant one exception. The problem with free range is a word that anybody can use. It's not regulated. So people say these are free range eggs, and that solves your conscience. You feel, oh good. But actually, a number of times I've gone to see what this involved, and sometimes it's nothing at all. It's a space this big, and they say, well, they're free range. How are they free? They're not free at all. Now, there are once in a while there are exceptions, but they tend to be really small. I mean, for example, we have a baker called Tower Baker that bakes amazing bread in St. Helier's on Waimarie Street. And next to him is a wine shop. And this man, for some reason, adores chickens. And he has hens on his property, and he sells their eggs. And my children, I don't eat eggs because I'm vegan, but my children are vegetarian and they eat eggs. And these eggs are, I mean, they're just amazing, wonderful eggs. And I was talking to him a couple of days ago, and I said, well, I'll tell you what bothers me about this. I agree that your chickens are free range. They have 1 acre. They're able to go, and at night they come in, and he protects them at night. I said, but what happens when they get old? Because chickens generally, when they are no longer able to lay eggs, are killed. And he said, oh no, I wouldn't do that. I'm grateful for what they've done, so they're just free to wander. That's different. That's true free range, but it's very rare. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And can you tell us about your new book, Beasts, What Animals Can Teach Us About the Origins of Good and Evil? Well, it's not a very popular book, I have to tell you that, I'm afraid to say. And I think part of the reason is I look at the dark side of humans, and I do compare us, in a way, negatively to other so-called apex predators, that is, supreme predators on the planet. Say, well, dogs are one, wolves in any event, and the big cats, and orcas. And I was particularly fascinated by orcas because I learned a great deal from, you have here in New Zealand the world's leading authority on orcas, Ingrid Visser. I went to visit her. She's utterly fascinating. And one of the questions I put to her that I've always wanted to ask an orca expert, I said, well, we know that orcas have never killed a human in the wild, ever. But tell me, how often do orcas kill other orcas? And she said, well, it's an interesting question. And she said, as far as I know, and you better check with other researchers, which I did, no orca has ever killed another orca in the wild. So here's this other extraordinary brain on the planet, the ultimate predator, and they kill only what they eat, they don't kill animals for fun, and they don't ever attack one another. Now we, in the 20th century alone, humans, have killed more than 200 million of our own kind. So who's superior here? Who's morally superior? clearly orcas are. And I think it's time that we recognize that there are animals on this planet who do better than we do as moral beings, including Benji and dogs, and even cats. And I think we have a great deal to learn, and that's kind of what the book is about. Why are we such a violent species when almost every other animal, even the ones that eat meat, they do it because they have to, and they don't attack their own kind generally, and they don't attack animals they don't intend to eat. So we have a lesson to learn from them.
So why do you think humans are so violent? And even more importantly, what can we do about it? How can we stop it?
Yeah, well, you know, I hate to say this, but one of the things we can do to stop it is to stop killing other beings. That includes humans and animals. And that's why I'm a strict vegetarian in that sense. I don't want other animals to suffer. And I think it goes along with my feelings about human rights. I don't like wars. I don't like attacking people. I don't like racism. I don't like sexism. I believe in egalitarianism, an old New Zealand virtue, but right across, going to animals as well. The reason why we are like that is not easy to answer. I suspect it had something to do, you know, Jared Diamond, the anthropologist, American anthropologist, had a very interesting article called "The Greatest Mistake in the History of the Human Race." I was always, oh wow, what a title. It's a great title.
That is.
And for him, and you can find it online, it's very easily available. It's a very short article, a few pages. He said it was human domestication of plants, agriculture. And he explains it in great detail. Well, not such great detail, but convincing detail. And I thought, you know, that made me think, well, what about the other domestication? The domestication of animals. What did that lead to? Well, in two cases, it was positive. Dogs and cats. And primarily because they chose to throw in their lot with us. And cats and dogs are part of our family. They really are. And people realize that, especially in New Zealand, probably more than anywhere else in the world.
Really?
You have more cats and homes in New Zealand than any other country. And most people who have cats feel these are persons or personalities, and I would never harm them. They wouldn't dream of it. And the cats have a good life, by and large, and so do dogs, because they want to be with us. But if you look at farm animals, it's not true. They're confined. They're in prison. They're always confined, pigs especially. And it's especially upsetting to me with pigs because they're such intelligent animals. And they're so much like dogs. I've been around pigs that wag their tails when you come in the door because they want to see you, that would be glad to sleep in your bed or at the foot of your bed. And when you go for a walk, they want to go too. They're very companionable. They're clean animals. They're smart animals. They're fun animals. And the way we treat them, putting them in sow stalls, is just horrendous. It, again, does not bear thinking about. So I believe that when we did that kind of thing and we domesticated, this unleashed a sort of cruelty in humans. Now, because before that, you couldn't get near a wild cow. There's no way that a human could approach a wild cow, let alone a bull. But once you've confined them and you change their nature and you cut this off and cut that off, then of course you can treat them badly at your will. And that's what we've done.
Very sobering and unfortunate. Thank you very much, Jeffrey.
It's been a great pleasure, Catriona. Thank you.
Now it's time for the Pause for Thought win and fail of the week. The Pause for Thought win goes to the North Carolina lawmakers who left for a break without passing a law that would have criminalised whistleblowers for exposing animal cruelty on factory farms. Numerous undercover investigations have revealed shocking levels of cruelty to animals at farms in the state over the past few years. Mercy for Animals disclosed severe cruelty to turkeys at Butterball Farms in 2011, 2012 and this year, when it revealed the heartbreaking treatment to which newborn turkeys are regularly exposed at hatcheries. Lawmakers responded by trying to pass legislation to punish those who reveal the horror of what's happening. The Pause for Thought fail goes to successive governments for failing to introduce enforceable requirements for labelling of eggs so consumers can make informed choices about what we buy. John Garnett of Northland egg producer Forest Hill Farm sold more than 2 million falsely labelled free-range eggs and made $376,000 from calling eggs free-range when they were not. Now let's talk about rodeos. You're watching footage shot by Farmwatch at the Huntly Rodeo in January this year. The New Zealand Rodeo Cowboys Association describes rodeos as one of New Zealand's most exciting and thrilling sports. There are 35 affiliated rodeos around the country and crowds of 5,000 people gather to watch them. But we never hear about the animal cruelty. The footage shows men pulling and twisting steers' heads, kicking a bull in the head and neck, calves being roped and slammed into the ground at high speed, and men grabbing, yanking and shoving baby calves. The fact that parents take children to watch this cruelty in the name of sport is particularly horrifying, as it means children are being taught that animals are for sport and that abusing animals is a positive activity. A complaint has been made to the Ministry for Primary Industries about the cruelty observed at the Huntly Rodeo. There's no word yet on whether the Ministry will take any action. Auckland Council instituted a ban on rodeos on council land, but recently revisited this issue. There's an annual rodeo held in Warkworth. Auckland Council now says that its legal advice is that the rodeo ban has not been overturned by its new events policy. If you want to ensure that rodeos don't take place on council land, let Mayor Len Brown and councillors know your views. And thanks to Farmwatch for this footage. Now, let's talk to Lynn Charlton, one of the people who attended the rodeo to film it. Kia ora, Lynn, welcome to the program.
Kia ora.
What did you see when you went to the Huntly Rodeo in January?
What I saw was how the culture of rodeo actually supports a normalisation of abuse of animals. And there was something about a culture that sanctioned this. Felt like it was kind of a nice day out with, families, people having a picnic, nice music. And in the middle of all that, there were animals in an arena going completely berserk. Yeah.
And so what cruelty was there?
There was cruelty in many different forms. In some cases the cruelty was like there was a youth on a bull that had collapsed on the ground inside the little pen, which is called a chute. The youth, because the bull, he wanted to get the bull up, he kicked the bull in the neck, so brought his foot around from the side of the flank right round to here and was kicking the bull repeatedly very fast in the neck, just like he was trying to start a motorbike. It seemed like he had no concern for the animal whatsoever. While he was doing that, somebody else was stomping on the leg of the same bull. Someone in the arena was stomping on the leg to try and get the bull back on his feet. There were calves flying through the air and landing on their backs with a rope round their neck. There was mucus and blood coming from the mouths of some of the bulls. We took lots of footage and lots of photographs, and when you zoom in with the lens you can see the pink in the mucus. You could also see the mucus flying beside the head of the bull, and that excessive salivation like that is about stress, and that's what is causing the bull to do that. There were riders get points for digging spurs into the neck area of and shoulders of the not the neck, the shoulder area of horses. So that's all to make them buck more. So there was that going on. I saw slapping of the calves, goading, prodding, pushing, just trying to wind them up and aggravate them before they did their performance. I also witnessed somebody using an electric prod on the muzzles of the calves, and the calves were all reacting by jerking this is at the chutes at the back. What else did I see? Steer wrestling, middle-aged men that had probably grown too old for some of the bull riding, which was mainly done by the more vigorous young men. They're rolling around in the dirt, twisting, really twisting, like 180-degree twists on the neck of the steer. If the steer didn't collapse on the ground, they would have had their neck broken. So the steer has a choice, you know, give in or have your neck snapped, basically. Yeah.
And you've laid a complaint with the Ministry of Primary Industries?
Yes, I laid a complaint with the Ministry, and they took a lot of evidence, and their investigation has been completed, though they're so run off their feet with all their animal abuse work that they haven't yet, you know, taken it right to the final point. I do expect that probably they will, you know, give people warnings, because this is, you know, how hopeless our animal welfare laws are. They will be more likely to give people warnings or provide education for them that they shouldn't kick animals like this or that kind of thing. So
rather than prosecuting.
Rather than prosecuting, which is what needs to happen. I also laid a complaint with the Veterinary Council of New Zealand. It appears that vets are being complicit in the abuse of animals at rodeos. They're not following their own professional code of conduct, which states that they must abide by the animal welfare laws. They also must, one of those things says that they must release animals that are showing distress in the chute or these pens, and that's not been going on at all. I've been to several rodeos, it's the same everywhere. So when these animals are not released, they've gotten onto their feet. And in fact, at one rodeo, the announcer at Walkwith last year, 2013, he was saying, we don't let them get away with this and get a victory. We want to get them back on their feet so we can have a shot at them, is what he was saying. So it implies that there is a systemic intent amongst rodeo organisers and the community there to breach the Animal Welfare Act.
And have you had any response from the Vet Council to your complaint?
Well, the Vet Council have said that they're waiting to see what MPI say. And MPI have said to me, well, we actually, you know, we've got nothing to do with the professional code of conduct. So I'm hoping that, you know, that they will, you know, they'll be re-looking at it. It would be good if there could be a meeting between the Rodeo Cowboy Association and the Vet Council with an agreement between both parties that this does not go on any longer, and that the animals must be released according to how the regulations are. If that was the case, then that would have a big impact on rodeo.
And do you want rodeos banned?
Yes, there cannot be a humane rodeo. Rodeo is based on driving animals berserk. How else do you get them to twist in the air with their mouths are open, the horses, their mouths are open, they're at very, very odd angles. Lots of the photographs show extremely, you know, odd angles with the animals. Their eyeballs are rolling, they're way off the ground. This is not normal bucking or bucking for joy, enjoying their performance. This is animals going completely ballistic. So there can't be such a thing as a humane rodeo. In American states where they have banned the flank strap, electric prods and spurs, rodeo has died out. So that really indicates what is causing the animals to go like this. Mm. Yeah.
Very sad. Thanks very much, Lynn. Now it's time for News of the Week. Jewel the Jack Russell saved her Mosgiel family from injury or death in a fire after barking to alert the humans to the fact their laundry was on fire. Teenager Natasha O'Brien was woken by Jewel's barking and then realised fire alarms in the house were howling. The family grabbed a cell phone and dialed 111 as they raced out of the house within 2 minutes of being alerted by Jewel's barking. Horses communicate with one another by moving their eyes and ears, according to a new study. The research found that domestic horses were aware of the directions in which other horses were concentrating by looking at the gaze of their eyes and the position in which their ears point. The study is the first time that researchers have shown that animals with wiggly ears are able to use movement to see what others are concentrating on. One of the scientists said that the study was groundbreaking in examining a potential cue to attention that humans did not have, the wiggly ears. The British public is being asked to take simple actions to help pollinators and protect the vital contribution bees and other insects make to the economy. Environment Minister Lord de Morley launched a campaign calling on people to do 5 things. These are: grow more nectar and pollen-rich flowers, shrubs and trees, leave patches of land to grow wild, cut grass less often, avoid disturbing or destroying nesting or hibernating insects, and think carefully about whether to use pesticides. Actually, I would say never use pesticides. You don't need them. There are at least 1,500 species of insect pollinators in the United Kingdom. These include 26 species of bumblebees, 260 solitary bees, 1 honeybee species, and hundreds of types of hoverflies, butterflies and moths. Vicky Fishlock, the resident scientist at the Amboseli Elephant Research Project, the longest running study of wild elephants in the world, has written about the sentience of elephants. She explains the deep connections in elephant families, and she also talks about the awareness of an elephant, Satao, of the value of his tusks. Satao was eventually poached for his ivory. Between 50,000 and 100,000 elephants have been slaughtered for their tusks in the past 2 years. A new political party called the Ban 1080 Party is being set up to contest the general election on 20 September. The party will campaign for the party vote around New Zealand and will also contest the Tasman and West Coast electorates. If you want more information, you can contact organiser Andy Blake. That's our program for this week. Join us next week for the final episode in the series. We'll talk about hens and what conditions they need to be happy. We'll also have our last election year political interview to hear about United Future's stance on animal welfare. Thanks for watching. Ka kite anō.